Steve Repetti was here in our last program. He's an angel as well. But Steve is here with his lovely wife that I just met for the first time. So he has two places of where he lives. He's from Nashville as well as Fort Lauderdale. He has more than 20 years experience as a software developer, technology executive, inventor, and investor. He's currently the CEO of RadWeb Technologies, right? And he is managing partner of RadWeb Technology Partners Startup Fund. He's the co-founder of Crunchfire Technologies and Crunchfire Ventures. He's a member of the New World Angels, board member of Miami Innovation Fund, former board member of Silicon Valley based on nonprofit data portability, as well as a member of the Open Web Foundation. His efforts have received numerous awards and recognitions, and he's been featured in PC magazines, PC World, eWeek, Information Week, CNET, and many others. So please welcome Steve Repetti.
Thank you. Every time I hear that sort of introduction, it reminds me that I've been saying I've been in this business for 20 years, for probably saying that for 10 years anyway, so I guess I got to update it. Yeah, I tend to be the geekiest guy in the room, and I came from software development. I was fortunate in business, lost my butt a few times, fortunately made it back more than a few times. So very active in the startup space, very active in anything that's going to support the startup community. I did this last year. Some people will recognize the slides, although the presentation is a little bit different. I wasn't expecting to be here today. I had a schedule change, so I was informed last night. Yes, so I put the speech together kind of quick. So yeah, you know, I am an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I'm a geek guy. I have a passion for what I do. Is there? Yeah, look at that. Cool. All it works. Technology. See right there. Somebody's getting royalty on that right there. But you know, I have a passion for what I do. It gets me up in the morning. It keeps me up late. You know, I love to see it in the eyes of fellow entrepreneurs. How many people here have that passion? Awesome, awesome. Well, so you're in the right place, by the way, if that's the case. Okay, now, how many people is it their birthday this month? Raise your hand high. Well, happy birthday, by the way. What you just saw is the ratio of companies that try to be successful and the ones that have a chance to be successful. Now, of those people that raised those hands, how many have their birthday today? Nobody. How about this week?
Behind.
Happy birthday to you guys. That's the likelihood. They tell you of what success is going to be in the startup community. Now, I have a real simple response to that. Bullshit. Because it's in your power to change those metrics. But that's what the metrics say. The VCs say, oh, I'm going to do 10 deals, and I got to do 10 deals because one of them's got to be the home run. Well, what they don't tell you is they look at 3,000 deals to pick out those 10. So the numbers suck. But you have the ability to do something about it. And that's what we're going to talk about here with all of this. If you get a chance, this is our website, crunchfire.com. And that list goes on and on and on and on and on. We didn't get a copywriter. We sat and brainstormed and we filled that up. Those are words from my mouth, from my partner's mouth, and we live it, we believe it. We go to a conference and somebody says something that's inspiring, it gets thrown up on that wall. So if nothing else, we get a chance. There's some inspiration guidelines. And it's the, you know, you hear people talk about don't be evil. Well, how about you don't be evil? You know, and those are some of the things that will help you through that process. So, this is a slide I had from last year, and since I had to pay for it, I thought I could use it again. But, you know, any great startup does start with an idea. Now, you know, it may be a great idea, it may be a crappy idea, we don't know. You don't know. And that you don't know is a big topic. Because fundamentally, if you don't know, how the heck am I going to know as an investor? How are you going to convey it to me? You want to risk my money because you don't know? Well, I'm not completely against risk, but I like to mitigate it. So it should start with you guys having a good understanding of this. We'll talk a little bit more about that concept, but it gets into the validation. Now, ultimately, what we're looking for is some element of success. Now, last year I used a slide that had a hockey stick. This is cooler. No, I don't have a jet. That's Photoshop. So, but that's what it would look like if I had a jet. We don't have time for my jet story, sorry. In any event, so, success means different things to different people, okay? It's not always about money. Clearly, this slide represents the idea of success and money. Trust me, guys, they're not hand in hand. Money's not a bad thing. You should not set your goals on trying to achieve that, because that is a metric of success. One metric of success with all of this. But, if you invent something that increases the quality of life on this planet, even a tiny little bit, that is success. If you find some personal happiness in all of this, that's success. If you can make your investors money, that's a good thing too, because that means you made money. But there are different elements of success. And I told this story last year, but this is with a little bit of a different twist. Is this success? This guy, Robert Kearns, invented the intermittent wipers. Very famous guy. As it turns out, he lived down the street from me, and I used to play with his son, and in fact, his middle son, he had like 7 kids, his middle son used to live with me, so I actually knew the story way more than you'll find on Wikipedia. Or if you happen to have watched the movie that Hollywood made about this story. Robert Kearns invented the intermittent wiper, ended up collecting, I'll go back to this slide, a gazillion dollars. And that's success, right? Nope. He got his money. He bought his island. Half of his kids didn't talk to him. His wife divorced him. The money meant nothing. So the dilemma here was, he felt that he was slighted because somebody tried to steal his invention. And guess what? They did. And they had to apologize. But he didn't want the money. He didn't want the apology. He wanted the right to manufacture every intermittent wiper on the planet. And he wasn't going to stop until he got that wish. He was so single-focused that he got everything that wasn't important to him. And he lost everything that was. Is that success? Because not by my definition. So in this case, brilliant inventor, pretty smart guy in the courtroom because he represented himself quite a bit. Apparently not so good managing the family home front, but he forgot the big picture. Was it his goal to actually have this fantastic manufacturing? He thought it was. It wasn't. The goal was he wanted to be able to pass on a legacy to his kids, the same ones that didn't talk to him when he died. So keep the main thing, whatever that is, whatever each one of you have in your head, whatever project, whatever table. It's about focus. Don't come to me and pitch your idea and say, not only do I have this great idea, but guess what, there's 10 more. And you start bouncing around. Whoa, slow down. Focus. As it turns out, it's not so tough to make $1 million. Now, does that shock you that I say that? It's actually not that tough. Work your ass off. Be fair. Have a good idea. Align yourself with people, that compliment you, that can help you. It's actually a pretty straightforward formula. Think about it. Think of all the times that you've tried, not succeeded, and when you start looking at that recipe, go, oh crap, I didn't have those 2 things. It's actually not that hard. The real hard thing is, what is the thing you should focus on? And then maintaining that focus. That's what the difference is. Keep the main thing. The main thing. And when that's successful, then you can figure out what's the next main thing. Another interesting story, and I started this conversation last year, but as stories go, it's still being written. So there's new chapters to all of this. So this crazy dude here in the sweater, it looks like he's from Princeton. Well, he is. I met him while he was still at Princeton. He had this crazy idea that people were going to buy posters and hang them on their wall. By the time you have a poster and it's framed and you have it delivered, it's $70. And he thought, wow, for $120, it could be actual, real art. And that's his great idea. So that's what he wanted to do. So he created a company called Exabytes, and I was happy to be the very first investor in that company. And let me tell you, that company went nowhere towards selling cheap art. Instead, along the way, something happened. Carter realized that when you start thinking about art, and I'd like to say I can take credit for this, other than I gave him some money, I can't. He came up with this awesome idea. He figured out the pivot. We tested him, we validated him, but he gets the credit for it. Because Carter realized that it wasn't about the sale of the art, it was the knowledge behind it. Given a piece of art, Carter developed what's known as the genome, the art genome, DNA, for art. Let's identify every single attribute, not the easy ones, how big is it, what's the landscape size of it, what's it painted on, what kind of material was used, what kind of paint was used. No, way more than that. The theme, the tone, yes, colors, but color relationships, the artist, and not just the artist, the period that he's going through, and the other relationships. In fact, he identified over 500 things per piece of art. And then he proceeded to inventory the world's art. Freaking crazy idea, crazy cool, as it turned out. Now, again, I get to say that all things aside, I was the very first investor in this company, and it turned out to be not a bad thing. Because the next round of funding was led by a guy named Eric Schmidt, who at the time was the chairman of Google. The next round was led by some guy named Peter Thiel, who was the original money behind Facebook. Anybody watching the show Silicon Valley? That crazy billionaire, that's who he's based on, Peter Thiel. I don't think Peter would like to admit that, but that's who it's based on. The last round that they just did, they just closed, I think 2 months ago, was for $18 million. I think they've raised close to $40-some million. He had a happy ending. That's my shares. I'm having a happy ending. And it's not over yet. So what's different here? Make sure the main thing is the right main thing. Not the 10 ideas you have, but the one. The one that's most important, that has most impact, that has the most likelihood of success, that makes you smile the biggest. All of those things. This is stuff that you have the power of. This is the filtering that you guys are doing long before you ever pitch to an investor. This is how you get out of that 3,000 to 1 ratio, by spending time thinking about this stuff. So we could have a whole long, multiple sets of conversations about, all right, how do you do this? But I actually think that it all falls into a very simple, single concept. And it's that last word, it's actually the last word of the last entry there, validation. Everything about your business requires validation. You require validation yourself. So you got a great idea. Who cares? I don't know. Wait a minute, I've identified some people, and I've demonstrated that they care. Okay? So you think you can build a product that they care about? Show me. Show yourself that you can do that. You don't have to build the entire thing, but you have to validate that you're right on the right idea. Wouldn't it suck if you put time and money into and irrecoverable effort to build your vision of something nobody wants, or you miss it, and while you were so focused on that, your competitor nailed it? Wouldn't that suck? It happens all the time. It's the 2,999 one that don't make it. All of these things are validation points. Can I build it? Can I attract an audience? Can I get them to come? Can I engage them? Can I get them to come back? Can I get them to tell 3 friends? Can I make money off of this? If it costs you $1,000 to acquire a new user, is that a business? Well, if you make $10,000 from that guy, it sure is. Please call me on that one. But you don't know these answers. How do you expect anyone else to? And the fact that you don't know these answers means you need to get these answers. They need to be very personal to you. I have a radical theory about business plans. And half the people in this room are going to throw things at me here in a second, so please don't. My wife just washed this shirt. So, I believe that every single company has to have a detailed business plan. It's got to be one of those big, fatty ones that they talk about. And you should never show it to anybody. It's your personal diary, so that you can validate to yourself that first and foremost, you thought through these things. You raised the issue. You did the research. You thought about the solution. And it's right there, ready to pull back. It's your personal, private playbook. That dilemma is playbook on page 57. I know exactly what to do. And I update it, and I enhance it, and I show it to nobody. The thing you show to everybody else is the executive summary. The thing that grabs me, inspires me, makes me want to ask, tell me more. That's good, because I'm not going to read an 800-page business plan. I'm not going to read an 80-page business plan unless you've got my attention. Again, you should have 10 more discussions about this stuff, because this is what helps you make it. But it all distills into a really simple concept. You think you got it figured out. Test it. Validate it. Prove it. Even if it's incremental. Mr. Investor, I've got an idea. There's no IP here or anything, but it's a big-ass market, and I just need $1 million to get it through. I'm willing to put in a couple $100,000 myself. Again, rare, but it's trying to sweeten the deal. The likelihood of that investor, unless he's an idiot, is, probably not. If you took that same concept, that exact same concept, and said, Mr. Investor, I've got this great idea, it's a huge market, I think I'm going to need $1 million to prove it out, but I don't want that from you right now. So I've got enough money where I'm going to prove out the first initial components, and then I'll probably go raise a little bit of money. And if you're interested, I'll certainly keep you in that loop. But if I get to the point where I prove these things out, I'd like to know, can I come to you? Because if I rock this, then it's something interesting. Now that is a very different conversation. You got my attention. I'm now vested in following along to see what happens. And you're not going to spend your 6 or 9 months chasing capital that you're not going to get. Who funds those kinds of deals? Friends, families, and idiots. Sometimes there's not a difference. There's also somebody I call the category of apeshit gaga investors. These are people that have more money than brains, or they have some other ulterior motive as to why they want to invest. If you do this, then I can roll you into my other company. I, as a sort of general investor, I don't have that benefit, so my wife might put me in the apeshit category, but in general, I don't fit that category. But they're out there, but those are the only people that will invest at that level. So you're on the path. That's me with more hair. I did have more hair last year. I've got a wedding coming up, so I somehow got talked into cutting my hair. It was painful. But that is what we call a BAC. And that was given to a young man from FAU. And as a matter of fact, that was at Citrix event. I think that says $25,000, but a BAC, big-ass check. So everybody wants a big-ass check. We've never passed out a big-ass check. You know there's a big-ass check website that you can go and order one of those crazy things? I don't know how you cash it, but it's metaphorically, it's kind of cool with all of that. Is that success? Well, to him, it's interesting. To him it was the comment. A lot of startups think that when they're successful raising capital, that by itself is a success. It is true that is an element of validation. You took your story, talked to somebody with money to part with their money. So there's validation. Maybe that you're really good at talking. Maybe you're a con man. Or maybe it's everything that you think it is, and they believed in it with all of that. But it is not a success. It's a validation point. I'd like to tell you that company is doing well and our money is compounding daily. It's not. It's gone. It wasn't even a year ago. But we like the guy. We will fund him again. Because it's a people business. And he was able to get through that initial phase of his business and maintain integrity and candor and all of the things that we love. I mean, don't get me wrong, we miss our 25 grand, we wish we would come home. But we look at every one of you here as serial entrepreneurs. If you've never done this before, it doesn't matter. You're here because you got the bug. And that bug is going to stick with you. And most of you are going to go through the tough times. In fact, probably all of you. And that's what makes you a better entrepreneur. That passion we were talking about in the very beginning. Sticking with that. Letting that drive you. Because these do have happy stories. And they're bigger past checks. I didn't give him one, but I might. He's still in the game. He did not burn his bridge with us. So, what's one of those cool takeaways? You know, I had the pleasure of, again, sponsoring this crazy thing called the Startup Bus. And if you ever get a chance to ride on the Startup Bus, please, you should. I was the first investor in that when it was a crazy kid out of San Francisco had this idea of putting a startup weekend on a bus, drive to Texas, and then pitch at South by Southwest. Winner gets funded. That was the premise. So it was one bus. And he pretty much drunk dialed me and said, I want to do this, and I need some money. And I went, I like you, Leo, I don't know about that. And the long and short of it is that they did write the check on the condition that I was on that bus. So I flew from Fort Lauderdale out to San Francisco, waved goodbye to my wife, because she wasn't going to go near the bus. Although she went to Texas and waited for me with a glass of wine in her hand, which was cool, because as the bus did pull up in Texas, there she was with a glass of wine. And that first bus had 24 entrepreneurs on it. It was quite interesting. The current head of development for mobile for Facebook was a graduate of that bus. Up until recently, the head of community development or community management for the Huffington Post was a member of that bus. A crazy little company called Instacart. The two founders met on the bus and then proceeded to raise $8.75 million. So it's kind of an interesting thing if you have a chance. But in any event, so I happen to several years later now, the next year there were 6 buses. And my wife did go on the bus. She was the den mother of 24 crazy entrepreneurs. Had a blast. Wish she was in Texas with a glass of wine in her hand. But we're stuck on the bus. We swore it off, no more bus. After that, there were 11 buses. There have been 2 buses in Europe. They were getting ready to do one in Australia. They did one in Africa. And this past year, there were 7 buses. And I somehow got wrestled into doing the bus for Nashville. So we ran and did that bus. And I also talked my wife into going again, which has now informed me that if I do it again, she's going to divorce me. So we probably won't be doing that again, although we'll see how she feels next year. But I happened to be in Texas, and they had Guy Kawasaki as a speaker to all those. Any of you who don't know who Guy Kawasaki is, you should look him up. He's got some great Kawasaki-isms. So 2 of them that really resonated to me, one of them related to this, but he said, you know, startups really only need 3 people. 3 kinds of people. And this is generic. It's not a guy-girl thing, so I'll just quote him. Guys who make stuff, guys or girls that make stuff, guys or girls that sell stuff, and adult supervision. Those are the only 3 things that startups need. And it kind of resonated with me. But his other thing that came out of that, which I think is very, very true, is he likes that word right there a lot. So he says, when a startup is pitching me to invest money, and I ask them about sales, and they say, well, you know, we're a startup, but we have partnered with blah, 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 blah. Guy's comment is, partnerships are bullshit. They are a substitute for sales, so they think. That's not the case. But in my mind, when I look at that word, and pardon me for putting it up there on the big screen, but it actually has a lot to do with the entrepreneurial spirit. Don't bullshit yourself first. And it happens all the time. You're ready to take mom's money and risk her retirement because you got it all figured out? You're bullshitting yourself. Maybe you do. But maybe you just got to be a little more careful, be a little more thorough, and work through it. Answer the questions for yourself first. I mean, don't bullshit me. The quickest way to not ever have me see you as a serial entrepreneur or any investor, right there, bullshit. Don't give it, don't take it. Simple as that. Anybody have a tattoo of this on their rear end? I'll be back next year to see. No, that's a horrible thought. In any event, what was I this thing here? These are words to live here, guys. Don't give it, because that will end your business relationship with guys that matter when it comes to money. And your partners, and your spouses, and your friends. It's such a simple concept. No bullshit. And God knows, don't take it. That's a warning sign. When your detector goes off, it's trying to tell you something. So, you've heard me talk incremental validation is the key to success as an entrepreneur in the startup world. And everything is about validation. And it never ends. I'm now at $100 million in sales. Can I bring in a new factory? Can I bring in a new management team? Can I create a compensation package that's going to make everybody happy? I don't know. But I better figure it out. So even that company requires validation. Okay, so you guys have got a great idea. You want me to give you $100,000 because there's a special right now, this second, where we can buy a bunch of ad time. Okay, my response is really simple. We know that I can send traffic to your site. You write that check, they're going to come to your site. Can you guarantee me that they're going to stay? That you can monetize it? That you can get them to tell those two friends? Because if it costs you $100,000 to bring all those users there, but you only make $10,000 from them, and if you don't know the answer to that, you're not ready to take that money. It's about validation. So, going back to sort of the opening statement, I think I got down to 2 slides here. I'm a little excited, sorry. So my company, Incremental Ventures, we are very active in the startup space. I am a board member of the Miami Innovation Fund. We look at very early stage deals. We're the guys that when you graduate from here, or you graduate from an incubator, some filtering that's generated, we want to be the first money in. That's what we do. And there's a bunch of us down in Miami that we meet every month. Okay, so we do eat and drink a little bit too, but we look at companies and we invest capital, a lot of it. And that's sort of the early stage of the ecosystem. But we're interested in it end to end. On the far other end is New World Angels. New World Angels is the largest angel network in the state of Florida. I have 6 partners in Crunchfire. All of us are members of New World. We are 2/5 of the board of directors of New World Angels. We are 3/7 of the selection committee. And we deploy capital. $500,000, $1 million. We'll lead multi-million-dollar rounds. We'll help the companies get to the VC round. And then there's Crunchfire. Crunchfire is a company that a partner of mine and I started. And we now have a bunch of partners. We look at everything in between and everything on either side. We're not bound. We're bound by cool. Is it cool? Cool in all the sense. Cool business, cool people, cool opportunity, cool investment, cool. That's what we look at. That's our criteria. It's hard to fit all that on a card, but that's it. But we started this conversation asking everybody to raise their hand, and we looked at the metrics of what it really means when a VC says, well, I got to have 1 grand slam out of 10. Because those numbers are, as bad as those are, they're skewed, because it doesn't count the 2,999 guys who submitted that didn't even get looked at. So, fortunately for us, there's our portfolio. Level Re's real estate, Forever Me social media, Play Shop is online casual gaming. Adjacent, next time you get arrested, you're using our software. Pando Daily, if anyone reads Pando, you should. It's the girl who started this in Silicon Valley, was a big week over at TechCrunch, and she went off and did her own thing. She wanted to do this independent thing. She walked into Mark Anderson's office, said, I want to do this. Mark said, here, give her $1 million check. Send me the paperwork this week. So these are our deals. Our success ratio, well, we have yet to have a failure yet, so I don't really know how the math works on that. And how do we get to this? How do we get you guys to be this? Validation, filtering, validation, all of those things. So the next Facebook is in this room. Maybe. The next Citrix is in this room. Maybe. And the ability to be the difference is in your all's hands. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Awesome, that was excellent. By the way, you talked about Citrix, and Nancy is here. I don't know if you know that.
I met her, yes.
Oh, gotcha.
I know one of the other founders, Randy, with part of our group.
Gotcha, very good. All right, so we have time for questions. Questions here.
No bullshit questions.
Hey Steve, welcome back. What brought you back this year?
So I am addicted to the startup ecosystem, and part of that passion, it gets me up early and it keeps me up late. Probably has a lot to do with the idea that maybe the next Facebook is in this room. It's not by accident that I was the first investor in Artsy. It's not by accident that I was the first investor in the startup bus. I'd like to have those accidents, not by accident, happen a little more. All right, in absence of good questions, I'll take some bullshit questions. No, I'm kidding.
Hello?
I'm at the point right now where I should be speaking to you. How do I reach you?
So, as you can imagine, investors see lots and lots of deals. So it does help if you know somebody that we know. We tend to have very public presence. Having said that, it's not always possible. So getting to know folks here, having an investor deck is the big thing. So if you come up to me afterwards and say, hey, what you just said, my response is going to be, I'd be happy to look at an investor deck. Don't send me the business plan. Send me a 10 to 12 page, 18-point font thing that answers what it is, why it's so special, who the competitor is, what pain you're trying to solve, all of the sort of standard things. Because your job is to get guys like my attention, but it's more than that. Your job is to get me to say no and hope you suck at it.
How do I get you the investor deck?
Well, you can send it to me, steve@crunchfire.com.
You got it.
Hi, I'm a software developer, a techie like yourself.
Awesome.
And my question is basically, when you're developing an idea, and personally, I'm trying to make sure that I finish something that I start, and that's my biggest challenge. And that's what I've observed in my past. And so, but the thing is, though, you want to make sure that you're spending the right time and the right idea. And sometimes these great ideas pop up, and obviously I follow that route, and I go,
Squirrel.
yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to stay focused, but I need to learn how to evaluate an idea and actually stay focused on that. Do you have any advice on that?
Oh, sure, yeah. So I do code every day of my life. No one will take that away from me. I don't do it for other folks anymore, but I have a blast with it. So I have a theory about software development, and that is that the likelihood of you sitting down in advance and figuring everything out and putting a blueprint together that you can then execute over the next 6, 9, 12 months is BS, right? And the reason is the market's changing so rapidly. And there are things that you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know until you get in there. So we actually have a concept known as controlled iterative development. Now, iterative development is known to every program on the planet. It's also known as never ships. That's the other name for it. So you have to add that word controlled to it. So controlled iterative development means that I'm going to track my progress. I'm going to force myself down these paths, but I'm also going to be open to maybe that's the wrong path. Maybe I need to back up and fine tune. But your biggest focus is, if you're doing the squirrel thing about the whole business, you're not ready to code yet. You should go out of your way not to code until you got some reasonable direction in your head. Not a blueprint, direction.
Thank you very much for treatment of the issues that you're bringing to us. One question though, no bullshit here. When you're standing up in front of the VCs and you're giving your presentation, inevitably you're going to run into a brick wall with one of the questions. How do you avoid the bullshit? What is your defense mechanism? How do you treat the issue when you truly find yourself without the answer?
So, that falls into 2 categories, and it does happen all the time. And there are twisted VCs out there. I think actually most VCs are a little twisted, that actually try to do that. They try to trip you up with all that. They're looking at deal after deal after deal, and some of them are more interested in playing the deal game than actually doing deals with all that. But inevitably, you're going to get asked a question that you don't know the answer to. And how you answer that falls into what kind of question. Is it a question you should know the answer to? And if you don't know the answer to it, you're screwed. And shame on you. If it's something that is not in that category, and you don't know the answer to it, then you better say, I've got a pretty good idea what the response is, but I really would prefer to check back with my team so I give you the correct answer. Because if you start tap dancing, we're going to get that. And that is what we're going to remember, not the thing you have that purifies water. and safe to the planet. We won't remember that. We'll remember the tap dance.
Okay, we have time for just one last question.
Steve, thank you for your presentation. Quick question. You say you were at the Crunch Fires, and I believe the other one was New World Angels. What are the trends that you're seeing and where the money's going? When I look at the data, especially coming from Pricewaterhouse, a lot of money's going the Northeast, Midwest, West Coast. A fraction of it is staying in Florida. What can you share with me about that?
So it's not by accident that I base my operations here in Florida and Nashville. They are two underserved markets that have awesome talent and awesome deal flow. And we see it, and it's events like this. Asked me earlier, why do I do this? To get out in the trenches, so that you guys know who I am and I start knowing who you are. That's what we do. And my partner Frank is going to be here on the 30th speaking as well. And we'll do this again next year if they want us back. I did use the word bullshit a few times, but hopefully they'll get past that. So the reality is that there's plenty of money down here, there's plenty of talent down here, and what unfortunately we see everywhere is a lot of startups that believe their own bullshit, and it takes us a while to filter through that process. The numbers are skewed because you can have a $100 million investment in Palm Beach, and that ends up skewing the numbers as opposed to having $100,000 investments down here. And the likelihood of Facebook being in that 1,000 is much higher than that one transaction. So the numbers get really, really skewed. You had a guy that came to me, he had the brilliant idea, he was convinced of it, he had some validation, couldn't get over the hump, and he was pissed at me because I wouldn't write him a check. And I referred him to some friends, and they wouldn't write him a check. And he was convinced it was South Florida. Convinced. So up he moves to Silicon Valley. And he's sending me Facebook messages, somehow I friended this guy. It turns out he's a nice guy, but he was a little upset. Goes to Silicon Valley and goes, everybody here loves startups, not like everybody in Florida, blah, blah, blah. Well, he came back 3 months later, couldn't get his funding out there, changed his business because the business sucks. Everything you need is here. In fact, it's cheaper here. And the people want it more here. So reach into this network. You are part of an alumni that's happening right now. There are people that you're meeting today, and that people have come through that door, which you will keep in your business world, maybe for the rest of your life. Leverage that. Why do I get on a freaking bus with 24 sweaty guys, men, girls? Alumni. Talent. The next big thing. Thank you.